There is a layer of black earth, no thicker than your hand, that runs through the soil of North America. It runs through Europe, through the Middle East, through parts of South America. Geologists have found it on 3 continents and in more than 50 separate sites. It contains things that should not be there. Microscopic diamonds, formed only under the kind of pressure created by a massive impact. Magnetic spherules, tiny droplets of melted iron frozen mid-flight as they cooled in the air. Platinum at concentrations hundreds of times higher than the rock above or below. Soot, ash, the signature, in chemistry, of a continent that burned. The layer is precisely dated. It was laid down 12,800 years ago. And underneath that layer, the world is one thing. Above it, the world is something else. Below the black mat, North America was full of mammoths, giant ground sloths the size of elephants, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, camels, American lions, glyptodonts, armored mammals as large as small cars. The Pleistocene was a continent of giants, and it had been that way for hundreds of thousands of years. Above the black mat, they are gone, almost all of them, within a window so narrow, geologically speaking, that it might as well have been overnight. Above the black mat, the climate has reversed. The Ice Age, which had been ending, comes back. For 1,200 years, the planet plunges into a deep freeze that no one alive has seen before. Crops that would not exist for thousands of years would have failed. Forests die back. Rivers run differently. Above the black mat, an entire human culture vanishes. The Clovis people, the first widely confirmed inhabitants of North America, builders of beautiful stone spear points found from Canada to Mexico, disappear from the archaeological record. We do not know what happened to them. We only know that one day they were everywhere, and the next they were gone. Something happened 12,800 years ago that changed the world. The evidence has been gathering for 2 decades. The argument over what it means is still tearing scientific journals apart, but the layer is real, and it is telling us a story we are only just beginning to understand. To understand what was lost, you have to understand what was there. Imagine North America at the end of the last ice age. The glaciers have been retreating for thousands of years. Vast new lands are opening up, grasslands, forests, river valleys that have not seen sunlight in 100,000 years. And the animals are extraordinary. Mammoths still walk the plains in herds. Not the woolly kind from the far north, but the Colombian mammoth, taller than an African elephant, with tusks that curve nearly 5 meters from tip to tip. They move through the open landscapes of what is now the American Midwest in numbers we cannot fully imagine. Their bones are still pulled out of construction sites today. Mastodons, slightly smaller, stockier, with straighter tusks, roamed the eastern forests. Giant ground sloths, called Megatherium and Megalonyx, moved slowly through the woodlands. The largest of them weighed 4 tons. Standing on their hind legs, they could reach the canopy of mature trees. Glyptodonts, relatives of the modern armadillo, wandered the southern grasslands. Some were the size of a small car. Their armored shells, found by early settlers, were sometimes used as makeshift shelters. Short-faced bears, the largest carnivorous mammals ever to live in North America, hunted the plains. They were taller than a grizzly when standing and could outrun a horse. Saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, American lions, larger than any African lion alive today. Camels, horses, yes. Horses were native to the Americas long before any Spaniard ever set foot here. The continent was richer in megafauna than the African Serengeti, and living among them, hunting some, avoiding others, were people. The Clovis culture, named after a town in New Mexico where their distinctive stone spear points were first identified in 1929, spread across North America with extraordinary speed. By 13,000 years ago, their tools are found everywhere, the Atlantic to the Pacific, from the edge of the receding glaciers down into Central America. Their spear points are masterpieces, fluted, thin, beautifully knapped, designed to be lashed onto wooden shafts and driven into the bodies of mammoths. We do not know how many they were. We do not know exactly where they came from, but we know this. For a brief, glorious window of perhaps 300 years, the Clovis people were the dominant human culture of the continent. And then they were gone. So were the mammoths. So were the giant sloths. So were the saber-toothed cats and the dire wolves and the short-faced bears and the American lions and the horses and the camels. Within a window of a few centuries, perhaps less, North America lost more than 30 genera of large mammals. Some estimates place the number of individual animals killed at hundreds of millions. diamonds. The cause has been debated for over 100 years. For most of that time, the leading theory was simple. The people did it. Overhunting, the theory said. The Clovis spear points were too good. The animals had never seen humans before. They had no fear of them. The hunters spread across the continent and killed everything they could until there was nothing left to kill. It was a tidy story. It had been the consensus for 50 years, but there were problems with it. The Clovis people disappeared too. Whatever killed the megafauna seems to have killed their hunters along with them. And the timing, the sheer suddenness of the extinction, the way it lined up exactly with a sudden global climate reversal, never quite fit a story about spear points and stone tools. Then, in 2007, a small group of scientists published a paper that proposed something so strange that most of their colleagues dismissed it immediately. They said something fell out of the sky. The 2007 paper was the work of a multidisciplinary team, geologists, chemists, archaeologists. They had been finding the same anomalies independently at sites scattered across North America. A thin black layer, always at the same depth, always dated to roughly 12,800 years ago, and inside it, things that simply should not exist in ordinary sediment. The first clue was the soot, vast quantities of it, the kind of soot you only get when an entire continent burns. The chemical signature suggested wildfires on a scale never recorded in human history, fires that may have consumed up to 10% of the Earth's biomass in a single event. But fires, even continental ones, do not produce nanodiamonds. Nanodiamonds are exactly what they sound like. Diamonds, microscopic in size, formed under the kind of brief extreme pressure that only occurs in two places in the universe, inside the cores of exploding stars, and at the moment of impact when an object from space hits the Earth. The team found nanodiamonds in the black layer, in quantities thousands of times higher than the rock above or below, at sites in the United States, Canada, Mexico, the Netherlands, and Greenland. The kind of thing you find around impact craters. They found platinum, a lot of it, concentrated in the same thin layer, at sites thousands of kilometers apart, at concentrations that simply cannot occur from ordinary terrestrial sources. Platinum is rare in Earth's crust. It is common in certain types of meteorites. And they found something else, something stranger. In ice cores drilled out of the Greenland ice sheet, the great frozen archive of Earth's climate history, they found the same platinum spike, locked in ice, dated to exactly the same window, 12,800 years ago, give or take a few decades. The conclusion the team proposed was extraordinary. They said that something, most likely a comet or a fragment of one, broke apart in Earth's atmosphere or hit the ground 12,800 years ago. Not in one place, in many places at once. A swarm of fragments, possibly hundreds of them, striking across North America, Europe, and the Middle East within a span of hours. The impacts ignited continental wildfires. The fires put enough soot and ash into the atmosphere to dim the sun for years. The dimming triggered a sudden dramatic cooling. The ice that had been melting began to grow again. The climate flipped and the world plunged back into the ice age for 1,200 years. The animals died. The forests burned. The Clovis people, whose culture depended on the megafauna they hunted, vanished with them. This event has a name in geology. It was already known before the comet theory existed. Scientists called it the Younger Dryas, named after a small Arctic flower whose pollen suddenly reappears in European sediment cores at exactly this moment, indicating a return to Ice Age conditions. The Younger Dryas was real. The climate reversal was real. The mass extinction was real. The disappearance of the Clovis was real. The only question was what caused it. The 2007 team said it was a comet, and the scientific community went to war. For most of the years that followed, the impact hypothesis was the underdog. Establishment archaeologists and geologists pointed out fairly that no crater had been found. If something had hit the Earth hard enough to cause a continental-scale extinction, surely there would be a hole somewhere. The team had answers. A comet airburst, an explosion in the atmosphere, like the one over Tunguska in 1908, does not leave a crater. It leaves only the chemical signature of the explosion, and a swarm of smaller fragments would distribute that signature across thousands of kilometers without creating any single large crater. Critics weren't convinced. Replication studies came back mixed. Some labs found the nanodiamonds, others didn't. Some found the platinum spike, others reported only only background levels. For most of the 2010s, the impact hypothesis was treated as fringe. Mainstream textbooks barely mentioned it. The standard story, overhunting plus natural climate change, was what students were taught. And then, slowly, things began to shift. In 2018, a team using satellite data and ice-penetrating radar identified a massive impact crater under the Hiawatha Glacier in northwest Greenland, 31 kilometers across, buried under nearly a kilometer of ice. The dating was uncertain at first. Radar cannot tell you when an impact happened, only that one occurred. Subsequent analysis suggested the crater was older than the younger Dryas, possibly much older. The connection remains debated, but the discovery proved that an impact of that scale could occur in this region without our knowing about it for thousands of years. In 2019, researchers in South America found the same black layer, the same platinum spike, the same nanodiamonds, at a site in Chile that had been a Clovis-era human settlement. The site shows clear signs of a sudden, violent burning event, and then nothing. Human occupation simply ends. In 2020 and 2021, more confirming studies appeared. Ice cores from Antarctica showed the platinum signal too, meaning whatever happened was not just regional but global. In 2022, a team published a study of an ancient settlement at Abu Huraira in modern Syria. The village was occupied at the very moment of the younger Dryas. The deepest layer at the site contains melted glass formed at temperatures higher than 2,200 degrees Celsius, temperatures that no fire on Earth, no volcano, no lightning strike could produce. Only an impact or the airburst from one can create that kind of glass. Abu Huraira was on the other side of the world from North America. If the impact hypothesis is right, this was not a regional event. It was a planetary one. The scientific consensus today remains unsettled. Many geologists still favor purely climatic explanations for the younger Dryas. Disruptions in the Atlantic Ocean circulation, possibly triggered by the sudden draining of a vast glacial lake into the North Atlantic. The impact theory remains controversial, but the controversy itself has shifted. What was once fringe is now openly debated in major journals. The evidence for something unusual happening 12,800 years ago is no longer in question, only the cause, and the people who lived through it left their own record. There is a peculiar thing about flood myths. Almost every culture on Earth has one. A great flood sent by the gods that destroyed the world. The biblical Noah. The Mesopotamian Utnapishtim, whose story predates Noah by more than 1,000 years. The Greek Deucalion. The Hindu Manu. The Aztec story of the fifth sun. The Chinese story of Yu the Great. Indigenous flood traditions across North and South America, Australia, Polynesia, Africa. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as mythology. Variations on a universal human fear, but the dating of these traditions, where it can be traced, often points to the same window, the end of the Ice Age, the melting of the great glaciers, the rapid rise in global sea levels, around the time of the younger Dryas, when ice sheets were collapsing, when oceans were rising, when continental fires were burning, when something extraordinary may have struck the planet. Humans across the world were watching their world end. They did not have the language of geology or impact physics. They had the language of story. The sky fell, the fires came, the waters rose, the animals died. The world we knew was gone, and a new world began. This is what they wrote when writing was finally invented thousands of years later. This is what they told their children for hundreds of generations before that. Around fires under skies their ancestors had watched darken with smoke. We are taught to read these stories as myths, symbolic, pre-scientific, but the people who first told them were the survivors of the end of the Pleistocene. They lived through a climate collapse, a mass extinction, and possibly the impact of a comet. They saw the megafauna vanish. They saw the ice come back. They saw forests burn from horizon to horizon. What if their stories are not metaphor? What if they are memory? Today we live in what geologists call the Holocene, the warm, stable period that began when the younger Dryas finally ended, around 11,500 years ago. The climate has been remarkably stable for the entire span of recorded human history. Every civilization you have ever read about, Sumerian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Mayan, Han Chinese, modern industrial, has existed within a single narrow window of climatic peace. That window was made possible by the end of the younger Dryas. The mammoths did not come back. The mastodons did not come back. The giant sloths, the dire wolves, the saber-toothed cats, None of them came back. The Clovis people did not come back. Their descendants, if any survived, became the ancestors of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. The world that existed before 12,800 years ago is gone. Not in the way that ancient civilizations are gone, buried, recoverable, knowable, but in a deeper way. The animals, the cultures are vanished. Even the climate that supported them no longer exists. We are the inheritors of an empty continent. The ghosts of mammoths still haunt the soil under American cornfields. Their bones are pulled up by farmers and construction crews every year. The Clovis spear points are still found, scattered across the United States, by hikers who have no idea what they are holding. Something happened 12,800 years ago that erased a world, and the people who survived it told stories about it around fires for thousands of years. We have those stories. We did not understand them. We thought they were folklore. They may be the oldest history we have. The sky fell, the fires came, the animals died, a new world began. If the impact hypothesis is right, and the evidence for it is mounting, then the Younger Dryas was the closest thing to a planetary apocalypse that human beings have ever survived. We did survive it, barely. With losses we are still trying to count. The black layer is still there, 3 centimeters thick, pressed between the world that was and the world we live in now, sealed in soil and ice on 3 continents. It is the line that separates everything that ever was from everything that has ever happened since. And every now and then, an asteroid passes close to Earth, and we track it on radar, and we tell each other it will miss us. The people of 12,800 years ago thought theirs would miss them too, until it didn't.